Hey everyone, what's up? This is Uri for Gorilla Poker, and today we're gonna be looking at yet another high-stakes hand history. And to remind those of you guys who don't know, why do we look at how the best players in the world play? And what's the difference between a 40 KNL hand and a $2 buy-in hand, even though they look crazily similar? So the difference is that even though some of the sizings and some of the lines might look the same and look kind of crazy, is that when you look at high stakes, there's a deep reason and logic behind everything that goes on, and you can learn and generalize this into your games. So whenever you see a high stakes hand, you want to look at it and be like, okay, I understand what was going on, I understand what these people were thinking. And if you look at it and it just looks like crazy magic, then there's something there that you should be learning, because these guys don't have solver outputs, they're playing by reason and logic as they're playing, so everything should make sense to you. So 100, 200, this is going to be a 4-bet pot, so button raises to 2.5x standard button size, big blind 3 bets to roughly 5x, which is a good 3-bet size. It might seem a bit big to some of you, but at 100 deep, this is actually a very accurate 3-bet sizing. And button 4 bets to 5k, 25 big blinds, big blind calls. Now, very important to mention kind of the structure of the ranges. So big blind versus button large 3-bet, big blind is going to have a polarized 3-betting range, so it's going to have, some top end linear part and then random smatterings of other stuff in there. And the 4-bet range is also going to be polarized, so it's going to, have aces and kings and ace king and queens and all these hands quite often. But it's also going to have bluffs, and bluffs tend to be taken from usually the bottom of the calling range. If you want to imagine what the range looks like, and say you're calling suited kings down to king 6, maybe king 6 and king 7 suited would be nice bluffs. If you're calling all the suited aces, you can take the lower ones as bluffs. And there are all sorts of other intricacies to these structures, but especially offsuit hands, you sometimes take slightly better ones, but something like this, so kind of polarized range. And what is a big blind flat with? Well, of course he folds all his junky stuff, but the rest depends a lot on the rake structure and the specific size. So if you 4-bet to 5k, or to 5,500, and if the rake structure changes, all these things are going to affect the calling range. So these ranges are actually very, very sensitive if you want to play accurately. So we get an ace-king-7 rainbow board. Insane board for the in-position player. He has aces and kings and ace-king. All of those smash. He has some ace-queens. A lot of his bluffs have an ace or a king. Just a super-duper high-equity board for in-position. So out of position checks, and in position decides to go with a really teeny tiny bet here, which, personally, and I'm speaking purely from intuition, I'm not sure this is the bet size that makes sense for this board. Maybe it does. Like a tiny bet size is supposed to kind of leverage your range advantage to create pressure, but it feels like your range advantage is kind of so overwhelming you maybe just bet bigger. I wouldn't be shocked. But the idea is, throw this tiny bet out, and then your opponent has Jack 10, Queen 10, Queen Jack, King X, or a low pocket pair. Yeah, I mean, to me, the bet size feels inappropriate for Ace King 7. I could see it on like A7 deuce, but Ace King 7 personally feels a bit off. All the gut shots have easy continues, all the lower stuff has an easy fold. It just feels like the wrong size. But yeah, that's just my intuition. So we have a 15% c-bet and a call from out of position, turn 8 of hearts, which is a relative brick. Say out of position might have 7-8 suited, 2 combos, but I think there is a decent chance they fold flop anyway. And I think there's a decent chance pocket 8s folds flop, so kind of complete brick. Goes check check, so now in position is still going to have some traps because we're at a low stack to pot ratio, so he's not in a rush to get money in. And you can imagine, for example, a hand like pocket ace is just checking back a lot. And out of position has still his entire range, so river king, out of position decides to go for a pot-sized shove. So he's saying he has trip kings may be a really high kicker ace, and he thinks that's good enough to get stacks in like something like ace queen. And of course, if we're asking what are the bluffs, given the 15% pot size flop bet, you have queen jack, queen 10, jack 10 suited kind of fully represented here. So plenty of bluffs to choose from, and I would guess out of position actually doesn't even get to bluff all of them. But yeah, he does go for a shove. In position, decides to call. We have king queen off for out of position. 3-bet seems fine, calling the 4-bet. This is the marginal part where, like, what's the 4-bet size and what's the rake structure, etc. It's probably fairly close. I would say, like, you don't call king jack off here, but this is probably just about fine. I'm sure if it wasn't fine, Viktor wouldn't have called. So yeah, makes sense on a flop, makes sense on a turn. Obviously shove the river for value. And ace deuce of clubs, like we said, it's one of those 4-bets that makes sense, like the worst ace that you have 4-bets. I'm not sure it's very necessary because you do have quite a lot of ace x 4-betting, so not like you need to hit the ace more. So I wouldn't be surprised if this is a very low frequency or maybe even non-existent 4-bet hand. But yeah, I can see the logic. It fits the structure of the range and it's probably there if this guy put it there. So yeah, flop bet, like I said, I'd go bigger. Turn check check. You could also make a case for betting this hand on the turn. Like we said, you get some protection from all the gut shots and king x that called you on the flop. But checking back seems fine as well. And then on the river, it's a very reasonable bluff catcher. And of course, it is a bluff catcher, right? This is not beating a value bet, but it's nice that you have a deuce and no queen jack 10. And I think it's just a kind of whatever spot. You probably have to call this a decent amount and not make a lot of money doing so. Let's take a short look at PioSOLVER. Okay, so I have built the 4-bet pot. Don't mind the suits, they're not important. You guys can see the in-position 4-bet range, and like I said, everything is a bit rake dependent, but we have these bottom of range hands. And like I said, offsuit hands play a bit different, because there's some element to kind of dominating your opponent's calling range. And out of position calling the 4-bet. This is all going to depend on rake structure. You can see here king queen is not quite making it in there, but king queen suited is, and queen jack, queen 10, jack 10 are. So we're going to throw in king queen off. I mean, actually there is no need. We can just go with king queen suited there. But this is just rake structure and exact size dependent, so we're not reading into it. So yeah, out of position checks, and here I put in 2 bet sizes for in position. I put a 15% and a 30%, and we can see that solver actually likes using both. So it can full range bet almost with multiple sizes, and then the small bet is more suited for the sets and hands like queens and jacks and maybe weak aces, and the big size for your good aces. So I was kind of right plus wrong here, but since the guy used 15, we will go ahead and assume that he's just range betting 15%. We will add king queen offsuit to the out of position range, and we will restart the tree. 4-bet pots run really fast, so you guys might even wait with me as we do this, and it's already ready. So check in position, bets 15%, and here we have out of position play where king queen offsuit is going to call. 8 of hearts turn, like we said, kind of looking at the calling ranges so you guys see what it is. All the pocket pairs have to fold. 7-8 suited can call only with a backdoor. Just ace x, king x, and these gut shots mostly continuing. So 8 of hearts, check. Here in position can quite often continue barreling with an ace. Like I said, it kind of makes sense. Even hands like queens and jacks kind of make bets, which is surprising to see, but I mean, just look at your range and these hands are not really showing down and winning given the context of the ranges. So if you kind of look at your equity, it's already 26% on the turn, so not really a hand that we're very excited or very able to show down. But yeah, goes check check, and king of diamonds on the river. Here out of position, decides to shove with king queen off, which makes sense for that hand. It doesn't make sense necessarily for your range. Your range often wants to go more like half pot. looks like with your ace-x. And since you don't have many trips because you don't have king-queen off, not too many shoves, but yeah, that's just this range. Maybe Viktor does have more king-queens. And like I said, queen-jack, queen-10, jack-10, you're going to have to do some giving up there. You actually bluff with your 7 and your 7-8, which are never really winning. Yeah, when you shove, what's your opponent going to do? So it's a pot-sized shove. He's going to call half the time, fold half the time. And then you're kind of going to see this bluff-catching, very general, very generic poker structure, right? So if the shove is a lot of king-queens for value plus some bluffs, we're of course going to call every king in our range, king 10, king jack, king queen, king 9, pocket kings, pocket aces. These are what we call value catchers. Something like ace jack, ace 10, ace 7, all the kickers, all these hands are roughly indifferent in mixing calls and folds. And similarly, pocket queens, which is beating bluffs, it's blocking king queen, but it's also blocking some of the bluffs. So you kind of get this general generic poker structure, which you will see on rivers all the time, where when one player goes very big, the other player is like, okay, I'll call all my super nut hands or stuff that has a heavy blocker to your value range like king 9, and then just kind of mix with all my other bluff catchers, unless, I have an exploitative reason to go otherwise, but the solver is not going to show us that. So yeah, overall, looks like a very well played hand by both players. And that's it for this one. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Let me know what you think in the comments, like and subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you guys next time.